At 1:50 a.m. on May 19, 1944, Lieutenant Commander Walton Pendleton stood inside the tight, dimly lit Combat Information Center of the USS England. In front of him, a sonar operator traced a faint contact, moving slowly, 6 knots beneath the black Pacific north of Bougainville. Pendleton was 37 years old. It was his first war patrol as commanding officer, and he had no submarine kills to his name. The Japanese Imperial Navy had stretched a line of 7 submarines across the shipping route to the Marianas, a steel curtain meant to spot and strike American task forces before they could gather. The England was a Buckley-class destroyer escort, 77 feet shorter than a fleet destroyer, designed for one purpose only, to hunt submarines. But what made her different wasn't her size. It was the new weapon sitting on her foredeck, 24 spigot mortars, mounted in tight rows. The British called it the Hedgehog. Unlike depth charges, which were rolled off the stern and exploded at preset depths, Hedgehog rounds were fired forward, 200 yards ahead in a circular spread. Each projectile carried a contact fuse. It exploded only when it actually struck metal. For decades, anti-submarine warfare had relied on depth charges. Drop them, set an estimated depth, hope the target was still there when they went off. The statistics told a harsh truth. By mid-war, British forces had launched more than 5,000 depth charge attacks for just 85 confirmed kills, roughly 1 success in 60 attempts. The rest escaped through chaos and luck. Depth charge explosions churned the sea so violently that sonar went blind for 15 minutes, giving submarines the perfect window to slip away. The Hedgehog changed all of that. It fired ahead, letting the ship keep sonar contact through the entire attack. Each 65-pound bomb carried 35 pounds of torpex, powerful and deadly. But the system stayed silent if it missed. No bubbles, no roar, no lost target. Still, early trials hadn't inspired confidence. Only a 5% success rate. Captains trusted the familiar thunder of depth charges more than a weapon that stayed silent most of the time. Pendleton didn't care about superstition. He trusted numbers. 1 Hedgehog kill for every 5 attacks versus 1 depth charge kill for every 80. The math was clear. 4 days earlier, Fleet Radio Unit Pacific had intercepted a transmission from the Japanese submarine I-16. Destination Bougainville. Arrival expected 2000 hours, May 19th. Intelligence couldn't have been better. England and 2 sister ships had taken station directly along I-16's predicted route. Now, the contact was real. The sonar operator called the range 1,500 yards. The target was diving, standard Japanese evasion, sharp turns, rapid depth changes. Pendleton gave the order. Prepare to fire. 1,341 hours. The first Hedgehog salvo leapt from the deck, 24 small explosions of steam and flame arcing through the sky. They splashed into the sea, sank fast, and vanished. Seconds later, nothing. Silence. Miss. I-16 had turned. Second attack. 1 detonation at 130 feet. Enough to rock the England's bow, but not destroy the target. Third attack. Another miss. The fathometer gave the clue. I-16 had gone deeper. 325 feet, well below the earlier estimates. Fourth attack. The submarine twisted inside the pattern again. Miss 1,433 hours. Then came the 5th run. 24 more projectiles plunged into the ocean. 4 detonations, then 6, followed by 1 colossal blast. The concussion lifted England's stern clean out of the water and knocked sailors from their feet. 20 minutes later, the sea began to bleed oil and debris, wood fragments, bits of fabric, scattered wreckage. I-16 was gone. All 107 men aboard perished. Pendleton's destroyer escort had drawn first blood. But even as oil spread across the Pacific, Fleet Radio Unit Pacific broke more news. 7 more Japanese submarines waited ahead, stretched across the northern approaches to the Admiralty Islands. The patrol line had a name, NA Line, and England was sailing straight for it. The destruction of IS-16 was more than a single victory. It was proof. Proof that the Hedgehog worked and that Pendleton's small ship could outthink and outrun the most dangerous hunters of the Pacific. But there was no time to celebrate. The Japanese patrol line, NA Line, was still out there, and England had orders to break it apart. Each submarine was positioned roughly 60 miles apart, forming a chain meant to detect and ambush any American fleet moving toward the Marianas or New Guinea. With IS-16 gone, the chain had a weak link. Pendleton planned to rip through the rest of it, one sub at a time. May 22, 1944. Contact with RO-106. Just before dawn, sonar detected another faint echo. The contact was small, distant, but steady, likely another Japanese sub. Pendleton's men came alive, each station silent except for the ping of sonar. The time, 3 o'clock hours. Range, 1,800 yards. England's sister ships, USS George and USS Raby, moved into a search formation. All 3 destroyer escorts were now hunting the same ghost in the dark. The contact deepened. 120 feet, 150, 200. RO-106 was diving. She had spotted something on radar and slipped under the waves to hide. Pendleton's voice came calm and low. Maintain bearing. All engines stop. Prepare to fire Hedgehog 0330. The first salvo thundered forward. 24 warheads sliced into the sea. They sank and have vanished. No explosions. Miss. The submarine had changed direction again. The sonar team followed the new echo, tracking the faint heartbeat of steel in the deep. Second attack. Another miss. The sea stayed silent, mocking them. But then, third run, 0350. The Hedgehogs flew once more. 4 detonations erupted in sequence. Then a 5th, massive shockwave rolled beneath the hull. The sound of a hull imploding under pressure. The ocean boiled with black oil, wooden planks, and shattered metal. RO-106 had vanished. 80 crewmen lost. Pendleton marked the kill silently on the board. 2 submarines in 3 days. The pattern of the hunt by now, every Japanese commander in the region knew that something lethal was moving among them. Fleet radio intercepts told Pendleton that enemy transmissions had grown frantic. Submarines were reporting lost contact with each other, broken formations, and sudden silences where messages should have been. The Americans had found a rhythm. The tactic was simple but deadly. 1. Sonar contact at long range. 2. Approach quietly on electric drive. 3. Fire the Hedgehog only when the range dropped below 1,200 yards. 4. Keep constant sonar tracking. Never lose the echo. Unlike the thunder of depth charges, these attacks were almost surgical. A brief whistle, a splash, and, if successful, a dull metallic roar from below. No fireworks, no fanfare, just finality. May 23rd, the RO-104. The next morning, England, George and Raby were still sweeping the same sector when sonar picked up another contact. This one was moving erratically, turning in sharp circles, diving, surfacing, diving again. The Japanese submarine RO-104 was trying to throw them off. For 6 straight hours, the Americans played cat and mouse in the open Pacific. Every time they closed in, the sub would shift direction and dive deeper. Pendleton knew the game couldn't last forever. Fuel and battery power were limited below the surface. So he waited. Patient, silent, 15:35 hours. Sonar ping. Solid contact. Pendleton gave the command. The England accelerated to full attack speed. The Hedgehogs fired. 24 shells plunged into the depths. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 explosions in rapid order. A sixth followed, heavier, rolling up through the water. The entire crew felt it through the deck. Moments later, debris surfaced, charred wood, oil slick, and bits of metal. The sonar screen cleared. No contact. RO-104 destroyed. 97 Japanese sailors gone. In just 4 days, England had sunk 3 submarines. The ocean was quiet again, but to the crew, that silence carried a new weight. They had become the hunters, and everyone in the Pacific was beginning to notice. Between battles. That night, Pendleton finally allowed his men a few minutes of rest. They sat on the deck under a black sky, the sea calm and wide as eternity. Coffee cups in hand, they stared into the water that hid so many wrecks. Each man knew that tomorrow, another sonar ping could call them back to battle. Below deck, engineers checked the Hedgehog racks. All barrels still aligned, firing pins still perfect. The weapon had already rewritten naval warfare, but the crew of England didn't think about that. They were too focused on the next target, because somewhere out there, more Japanese submarines were waiting. And Pendleton wasn't done yet. USS England. Part 3. The Relentless Hunt. By May 24, 1944, USS England had already done the impossible. 3 submarines destroyed in less than a week. No other ship in history had matched it. But the ocean still held secrets, and the enemy still had orders. Hundreds of miles away, the Japanese Navy, stunned by the rapid losses, sent a desperate message to the remaining boats of the NA line. Maintain patrol, replace fallen units, enemy presence probable. In Tokyo, the Imperial Navy's staff believed the submarines had been lost to mines or aircraft, not realizing that one small destroyer escort was methodically tearing their line apart. May 24th. The sinking of RO-116. At dawn, England received an intercepted transmission. Fleet Radio Unit Pacific, the same codebreakers who had cracked Japan's messages at Midway, reported another submarine scheduled to pass near St. George's Channel. The sub call sign RO-116. The ship's engines hummed as it turned east by southeast. The sea was calm, visibility clear, wind light. Perfect hunting weather. At 5:05 a.m., sonar pinged again. A faint echo, steady and rhythmic, moving north at about 9 knots. Pendleton's eyes met his sonar chief's. Another one. He spoke quietly. Fire control ready. Range 1,200 yards. Make it count 0514. The Hedgehog mounts fired. 24 bright flashes lit the bow. The projectiles plunged into the deep. Seconds later, 4 detonations, then 2 more, then silence. Oil and wreckage began to rise almost immediately. A mattress, a shredded uniform, shards of timber. Pendleton didn't need confirmation. He looked down at the wreckage drifting past and said only, "Mark another." RO-116. Gone, with all 56 men aboard. May 26th, the RO-108, after the 4th kill, the tension on board had shifted from fear to disbelief. The crew no longer doubted the Hedgehog or their captain. They had started to believe they were meant for this. By the morning of May 26th, England was sweeping northward again with George and Raby. At 7 a.m., sonar picked up another trace. The contact was erratic, fading in and out, possibly shallow. Pendleton ordered a cautious approach. First attack, 7:45. No hits. Second run, 8:10. A sudden cluster of detonations. 6 explosions rolled through the sea. Moments later, the sonar screen cleared completely. The men stared at one another, listening to the silence. Then came the faint smell of oil. Buckets of black liquid began surfacing. Clothing. A sailor's sandal. The unmistakable signs of another submarine, destroyed. RO-108 had been erased from the ocean. Crew of 76 all lost. Pendleton gathered his officers in the wardroom. "We'll keep going until there are none left," he said. No one argued. The 31st. The final hunt. RO-105. The last known submarine of the NA line, RO-105, was reported operating north of New Ireland. Fleet Radio Unit Pacific once again pinpointed its path. The England set course. The hunt was nearly over. By now, the crew ran on instinct. Every station drilled. Every maneuver rehearsed. They could launch a Hedgehog attack with the precision of clockwork. Pendleton had become the calm center of it all. Never raising his voice. Never rushing the chase. 8:34 a.m. Contact RO-105 had been spotted. But this time, the fight wouldn't be simple. For 30 exhausting hours, the England, George, and Raby hunted the submarine across shifting seas. Each time they closed in, the contact vanished. Each time they thought it gone, the sonar would find a trace again. At last, 9:30, May 31st. The sonar tone sharpened. Depth 180 feet, bearing steady. Pendleton's final command of the campaign. Fire Hedgehog. 24 shells flew from the deck. A pause, then a thunderous cascade of explosions shook the entire ship. The sea swelled with debris and rising oil. RO-105 had been struck dead on. It was over. The sixth submarine in 12 days. An unbroken streak never repeated in naval history. The aftermath of victory. When the last oil slick faded from the sea, the England's deck crew stood in silence. There were no cheers, no shouts of triumph, only exhaustion and disbelief. 600 Japanese sailors were gone, and a single destroyer escort had done it all. Messages flashed from the Pacific Fleet. Greater than, "Well done." "We'll build a whole fleet like her if we have to, but none ever matched her record." The England had become a legend, a small ship with a name that would echo in naval history forever. USS England, Part 4, Legacy of a Legend. When the final echoes of battle faded, USS England turned toward Manus Island to refuel and resupply. Her decks were stained with oil, her crew hollow-eyed from days without sleep. They had hunted for 12 days straight, and in that short span had changed the nature of naval warfare forever. From her keel to her radar mast, England was just a modest Buckley-class destroyer escort, built for convoy duty, never meant to become a legend. Yet in May 1944, she achieved what entire fleets had never done: 6 confirmed submarine kills in 12 days. The message from Admiral Ernest King, Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Fleet, arrived soon after. There will always be an England in the United States Navy. Those words would follow her forever. A new mission. After the NA line was wiped out, England returned to escort operations across the Pacific. She guarded convoys to the Philippines, carried supplies through submarine-infested waters, and survived air raids that crippled larger ships. Her crew had become quiet professionals, men who had seen the sea swallow enemies again and again. To them, victory was no longer celebration, it was duty. Through the rest of 1944, she remained unstoppable. Enemy aircraft that crossed her path rarely made it home. By early 1945, the England was part of the Great Armada pushing toward Okinawa, the last gateway to Japan. May 9, 1945. The kamikaze strike. At 13:25 hours, radar picked up an incoming formation from the north. A dozen Japanese aircraft closing fast. The crew manned battle stations. Gunners opened fire. One plane burst into flames and spiraled toward the sea, but another slipped through the smoke. It was a kamikaze, a human-guided bomb. The aircraft slammed into England's starboard side, just above the engine room. Fire tore through the compartments. Ammunition began to cook off. For 3 long hours the crew fought the flames, passing buckets and hoses through smoke so thick it choked the lungs. When the fire was finally out, 37 men were dead and the ship was crippled. She had survived the deadliest gauntlet in naval warfare, only to fall victim to a single, desperate strike. The end of the ship towed back to port. The England lay silent. Her once clean hull was charred and twisted, her decks blackened. Damage reports declared her beyond repair. By September 1945, the war was ending, and the Navy decided she would not sail again. They stripped her of useful parts and sold the rest for scrap. The ship that had sunk 6 submarines in 12 days, that had rewritten the rules of anti-submarine warfare, was gone. But legends don't die with metal. They live in memory. Legacy. In 1962, the Navy commissioned a new ship, USS England, DEG-22, a guided missile frigate carrying the same name and the same spirit. At her dedication, veterans of the original England stood at attention, grey-haired now, remembering the sonar pings, the explosions, the silent victories beneath dark waves. Naval historians still study her tactics today. Her campaign remains the most successful anti-submarine operation by a single ship in recorded history. The ocean keeps her secrets. The wrecks of Under 16, RO-106, RO-104, RO-116, RO-108, and RO-105, resting silent on the seafloor, thousands of miles apart, yet linked forever by one hunter. Epilogue. If you traveled to the Pacific and listened closely on a calm night, you might still imagine the faint echo of sonar across the dark water. A small ship alone against the deep, a captain steady at his post, and the voice of history whispering through the waves. There will always be an England in the United States Navy. End of documentary, USS England. The ship that couldn't miss.